Barack Obama being the new president of the United States is just a tremendous boom, not just for the United States, but for the rest of the world. You've already seen indications of this just in terms of how interested the world is in this election. And in all fairness, it's not even wasn't just interested in this election. They were interested in Barack Obama. And I think what this means is that the United States can really lead again, and not lead with military force, but really lead with moral force, with a sense of cooperation. I think we'll see tremendous change and cooperation on things like climate change, on things like trade, on things like the financial crisis. And also I think it will actually create a shift in the world as the way different countries in the world think about race and think about their own citizenry. So I think it just really is a tremendous time for the world. Not saying there won't be some problems, but I think we'll actually see the world moving by and large in the same direction. Instead of, being angry at the United States, being angry at the president. So I think this is just really wonderful. What this will mean for race relations in the United States will be complex. I think, first of all, race is so complex. I mean, there's a whole range of racial attitudes and opinions for whites, for blacks, for Latinos, for Asians, for Native Americans. So one of the things we think about race sort of as discrete chunks, and really there's this continuum. And to some extent, that's what President Barack Obama really represents. He represents a bridge between the different races, and I think they open up a new set of possibilities. For the first time, it's clear that America is really a country for all people. And then how do we build both the goodwill, the institutions, the structure to make this a lasting reality? It seems to me that's the challenge. But I think people want to do it. And the people who supported President Obama clearly have that vision in mind. But it won't happen by itself. But I think we'll have a tremendous honeymoon for the next 6 to 12 months if we can get past this financial crisis. And I think we'll see some things, just like many people thought the presidency wasn't possible 2 years ago, we'll see some changes in race relationships that we wouldn't have thought possible 2 years ago. What we can expect for this first 6 months, I think first of all you'll see President Obama reaching out. I think it's interesting to me, this campaign leading up to the presidency was so important. I think it changed the role of women. I think Senator Clinton played a very substantial role. I don't think Governor Palin would have been on a ticket with McCain except for Senator Clinton. So I think that the hard work will be, okay, so how do we translate this into programs? And I think one of the things you'll see right away, which President Obama's campaign reflected, is including many more Americans in the discussion. So for example, I think that the bailout, the $700 billion bailout, Paulson really structured it top down. Let's bail out the banks, let's bail out Wall Street, and we'll think about homeowners and the rest of Americans later. I think President Obama will approach things differently, that he'll have ordinary people not just in mind, but he'll have them represented at the table in the discussion. So I think the sort of tremendous network of American involvement in this election will continue, and I think that will be really substantial. A lot of people are trying to figure out what the implications of President Obama mean for the black community, for the world. In some ways, one of the most important implications of him becoming president is a realignment of the country between the South and the rest of the country. In many ways, the South, certainly since Reconstruction, has really dominated national politics. You now have the Republican Party, historically since Johnson signed the Civil Rights Bill, really being the solid South. They've dominated the South in a place where the Democrats for years dominated. And they dominated in part by playing on racial resentment in many of the policies of the country in terms of guns, in terms of taxes, in terms of militarism, in terms of integration of schools, in terms of race relationships. It's actually been dominated by the South. I will say that, people like Nixon and others had to play a balancing act, but they played it by tilting heavily to the South. And the Republican Party's clearly built the support of their party by adhering to Southern ideals. To some extent, we're still fighting a civil war. The values of the South have really permeated much of the country in national elections. We haven't had, Barack Obama is the first Democrat elected since Kennedy that's not from the South. Um, and I think what this possibly means is there has to be a realignment. I think that it suggests to the Republicans that if they're going to remain a national party, they can't simply base it on racial resentment, on appealing to implicit bias, appealing to Southern prejudices at the individual level, but also at an institutional level. And I think that's even more significant with the President Obama being African American male. I mean, so it really offers an opportunity for the country to really become a united country in a way, and not to be led by residual resentment from the South all the way back to the Civil War, which is really we've been doing for over 100 years.